Welcome back to Stories from the Ashes, where we pontificate on good books and the stories that define and refine us. I'm Amber, and I'm here with Amanda, and our special guests today are authors S.D. and J.C. Smith. So Sam and Josiah, welcome.
It is our delight and pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are so glad to have you guys here. Many of our listeners will know Sam as the author of the beloved Green Ember series, but we are here today to talk about a new book, Jack Zulu and the Waylander's Key. And the two of you wrote this book together, and that's so exciting. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate it. We wrote it with our bare hands.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So, Josiah, I've been reading a lot of the information that is out about this book so far. And one of the things that I saw was that this was your idea. This book was your idea from a TV script that you had been writing. And that's really funny to me because I don't think a lot of kids even understand that TV is pretend to the point that they're like, TV has writers and I could do that.
He just figured it out. It's really, what? The stories? They're not
That's so funny.
Historical
what inspired you to take it from a TV script that you were working on and to move it into the novel stage?
So I had been working on it for probably a year and a half maybe, and just I would always talk through ideas and stuff with Dad. But eventually he really came to me with the idea because he had read my stuff and really liked it, and he felt like writing it as a novel would give it the best shot at actually being adapted into a TV series. Mm-hmm. And then from there we kind of just set to work together to adapt it.
So that's how awesome. Old were you when you started working on this?
I was 13 years old when I first started writing stuff for this series.
Had you been writing beforehand?
A little bit, not very much. I've always been interested in storytelling, but before that I was more interested in like visual art and kind of like, and I still really enjoy visual stories, whether that's movies or artwork or things like that. But I think this was probably my first major writing project.
Wow, that's pretty awesome to have such a big, great book for your first big project.
It's great. It's such an unfair advantage. It's awesome.
Is it in the genes? Is the writing skills in the genes?
He's good at it. I mean, he's definitely ahead of where I was. But you know, like he said, he was more of an illustrator. That's what I think. That was your first love, probably.
Yeah,
he was a really good, talented, visual artist.
Emphasis on was.
Was.
Yeah.
Was.
It was around that time he was really shifting into. That definitely wasn't. I don't feel like I can ever remember being like, you should really think about sort of writing and that kind of thing. I don't think that ever really happened. I was excited about his illustration. I thought, well, he's going to be a great illustrator. He's really fantastic. Mm-hmm. Award winning, actually. He would kind of casually enter some local little illustration contest or something, and he would win. He was really good at it. But he started sort of falling in love with the process of storytelling. It really wasn't like, hey, come along and do this. But at some point, when I first approached him about adapting Jack Zulu for a novel, I genuinely was like, you could do this. I could help you do this. I could help you adapt it. And at some point, and I said, or we could do it together, that kind of thing. And I've always loved the idea of, father and son working together. I love that. I love the opportunity, mm-hmm. especially since he showed so much interest in this kind of storytelling. My heart was certainly to kind of give him what I have, to bring him along and say, like, this because my hope is that it goes farther,
right?
Not just in like success, but just in being excellent at the work, mm-hmm. and so that's it was a pretty organic kind of a process. I think.
Definitely, yeah.
I really like that. I was able to read the book, and then there was a 24-hour window before I saw Amanda to pass the advanced reader copy on to her to read. And so my 15-year-old read it in that 24 hours. She was just like, don't bother me. I got things to do. So she plowed through it. And it was really humorous to me, our different takes on the writers, because I went into it looking for Josiah's voice, and I would, tell her as I was reading it, I was like, the humor is completely different than the drier humor of Green Ember. Like in Green Ember, I feel like there were some actually like laugh out loud funny moments with Helmer and Pickett, but otherwise the humor was much more subtle. Whereas in this one, I was laughing out loud so much that my daughter told me that it was rude and I needed to come in from the back porch because the neighbors were trying to sleep and I have a rather loud laugh. And so I was like, I wonder if, like if this is Josiah's humor or if like Sam and Josiah working together, their humor is building off here. And so then Inara comes to me and she's like, I'm only a few pages in and I can already tell that Sam wrote this. And I was like, how do you know that Sam wrote it from being a few pages in? Like, we're no longer dealing with animals. We're dealing with humans. Like, what is this correlation that you're seeing? And she's like, well, the wiser older mentor has told them some big news. And now he has to go and talk to a friend to give them time to talk about it alone over food. It's always over food. She's like, that's my question that I want you to ask him. I want you to ask if that's their family culture where they have serious conversations after heavy drama over food. Is that what we should have done after our fire? Should we have gone and eaten?
Oh, wow.
That's our question. Is this your family culture? Do you guys have like all your heavy stuff processed out over a good meal?
Okay.
I like to eat a lot. I'm pretty much eating all the time anyway. So whether it's enjoyable or heavy,
whatever is happening, there's food involved with our teenage boys. For sure. Yeah, I think that probably does happen. It's funny that you noticed that, or she noticed that. That's cool. I didn't. I can't even. Yeah, I never really thought about that. The mentor thing. That I was like, that's what we do. Father figures and people, who are disconnected, finding connection, that kind of thing. We definitely do that intentionally. But I hadn't thought about the food thing. But I like that. That's very. That feels very Christian to me. Gathering around the table, a table fellowship.
Feasting is an act of war, right?
Yeah, I love it. That's for sure.
And then my family produced another question as well. I was speaking with my mother about the fact that you'd published this new book because I've always talked to her about the Green Ember books as they're coming out. And I was like, yes, in this book, the main character is Jack Zulu and he's Black and his dad is from Africa. And then he'd come to the States for school and his mother is from the Appalachian Mountains and she's white and they got married. And now they're living in this small town in the Appalachian Mountains. And I was like, and it's really cool because Sam grew up in Africa as a missionary kid, and now he and his family live in West Virginia in this small town. And my mom's like, how's Sam's mother? And I was like, what? And she's like, how's his mom? I was like, what do you mean, how's his mom? And she's like, well, you said that Jack's mom is really sick in the book and not doing well. And I'm wondering where the art ends and the truth begins. So my mother wants to make sure that your mother is in good health.
She's okay. She's doing all right. She's a little older, but she's doing fine. There's not a whole lot of correlation between. There's some correlation that Jack's mom is a really faithful, wise, steadfast person in her weakness.
Yes.
And challenges. I think that's definitely true about my mom as well. Or Josiah's Coco, which is my parents use Zulu names for grandmother, Kulu and Coco, so they that's kind of a goofy thing from our family. So Josiah's Coco is a faithful woman for sure.
I really appreciated that aspect of the story because especially being so sick is so hard and it's not something that we often see in literature. And so it was just really nice to see someone being sick and being faithful through it.
Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah. I like that. It was the story fear is that can be a little too on the nose, but it just felt like, hey, in the end, we're trying to tell the truth and reflect reality. That's probably maybe our highest, if not one of the highest sort of goals. Yeah. That if we used sort of effective storytelling, but didn't tell the truth about the way God made the world and reality with a capital R, then we don't really have a whole lot of interest in that. We want to be excellent storytellers, but we want to be faithful above all.
I remember after you wrote one of the chapters with Jack's mom, you came to me and you were like, you'd sent it to me and you were like, I guess you could say things are getting pretty Christian.
That's the way we like things.
Yeah. We're definitely not apologetic about, we we don't feel squeamish about that. It's not this book is not a track by any means. I don't even know if it would fit. We've never really been like in the sort of Christian category as far as our books. I've never thought of them that way, except that yes, we are Christians. We're devout Christians, and we want to be faithful. So we were trying to be really good storytellers, but you're thinking about a small rural town in West Virginia, the family, and that's who they are. And so so often I think we feel like, oh, am I inserting this too much? Sometimes because there's such a prohibition in many ways, and people pretend like, not only, it's particularly in fantasy and sci-fi, which is ironic, particularly in fantasy, but we pretend like religious people don't exist often.
Right.
I mean, I can remember the Mormon writer Orson Scott Card. I can remember just reading him and like, oh, he has like, there's a Catholic in his story. Like, oh, it's like you could read science fiction forever and never come across anybody that even acknowledges the existence of a higher power.
Yeah,
which is just absurd. That doesn't reflect reality. So anyway, we weren't trying to be real preachy or anything like that, but we were trying to be faithful.
Yeah. I really appreciated that about your books, because I think that one of the reasons with sci-fi that it gets hard to include Christians is because of the gospel and God and his rescue plan for the world. And then you start getting into, well, how does this expand into other realms and other places? And so I thought that your book handled it very naturally and well, in a way where I didn't have to suspend disbelief too much in order for it to seem that there wasn't going to be like huge plot holes all over the place trying to keep religion as something that works in all the different realms. So I did really appreciate that. And what you were saying about religion with a capital R, and I was just thinking of true myths when I was reading this, and I really appreciated your how you incorporated like thin places in the veil, and the fact that there are all of these similarities between magic that happens with witch doctors and the superstitions of Appalachian Mountains. I remember reading Christy by Catherine Marshall when I was younger, and some of the superstitions and the ways that they were handling different things around childbirth and whatnot reminded me of missionary stories that I had read that were set in Africa or South America, and being like, I really feel that there are spiritual connections between all these different things that are not of light. And so I really appreciated you calling that out and pointing it out without making it something that a kid would want to go do a deep dive into, which I think is really dangerous. And I think that that's where I start having issues with books that present witches as good characters and as light, because the Bible tells us otherwise. And so I don't want my kids confused. And so I appreciated that. I felt that the magic and the source of magic and things that were introduced in this book did align with a Christian faith without being preachy, without feeling like you're being indoctrinated at any point. It's good storytelling. It was an excellent story. I'm so appreciative of having it out there in the world for my kids to read and to add to our family vernacular of shared stories that we can point to and hard things that we can point to. One of the themes that I really appreciated in this book was greatness versus goodness. Could you guys talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and just to go back to what you were saying, like I think that there are a lot of parents who are concerned. Oh, does this have witchcraft or that kind of thing in it? And I understand, because of what you said, because the Bible's really clear on sorcery and that sort of stuff. So it's not mysterious that's something that. And I think that the tone of the book, to me, you should come away with it as far as feeling like, no, there's a warning.
It does have witchcraft in it, but it's
right.
Yeah. Witchcraft is definitely bad.
Which the Bible has witchcraft in.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
It's kind of there's I hope a hospitable clarity about it, and it's a very clear, like, you don't want to mess with that. Like that's not a good thing. But you understand like why, and it gets to your question about greatness and goodness. I don't know if you want to take that or thinking about through the contrast, what Jack's presented with. It feels like
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things we talked about while writing it was like presenting the Rancast, the main villain of this story, as like attractive, and like that sometimes that type of wickedness, that like call to greatness, like it can be really tempting, especially because of what Jack's going through in his world. It's so we wanted that threat, that like temptation to be real to him, and that him choosing ultimately the path of goodness versus greatness to be a real choice.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. There is this sort of like Herod in scripture, the one who slaughters the children of Bethlehem. He's, his name in history is Herod the Great. That's who he is. He's
right.
And he was great. I mean, he built incredible things that still are around today. He was an incredible sort of king by permission, under the Roman rule. But he was a very great man. But was he a good man?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Right.
And he did some good things. Rebuilt the temple, all kinds of things, incredible things that were good. But an evil man in so many ways. And that's we wanted to be honest about the challenges. And Jack's not an idiot. This was something Josiah was really, really keen on, was that Jack, if Jack is a good, smart, he's a little bit of a superhero in making, and he doesn't have any superpowers or anything. He's an ordinary kid, but he's gifted, and we've all met people like this. I've played sports with people like this that are just like, wow, they're just incredible. Oh, this guy can play. And my brother, that Josiah is named after, can play any instrument. He just pick up an instrument and play it. He's amazing at like almost every sport. Very graceful person, very kind, and you just kind of meet him and you think, wow, that's somebody that's special. And I just think that's real in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's part of that's part of the whole thing too, is this sort of reality and the gifts of what God's given us. But a person like that would not just fall for anything.
Yes.
So our villain is, and Josiah was really keen on cranking that up. Don't just make him like a pantomime villain, a baddie. It's easy to see why we'd reject that. No, it's attractive, which is true about witchcraft too, because it's like, if you're in Pharaoh's court, and Aaron is touching his staff to the Nile or to some water, and it turns to blood, and then the wizards from Pharaoh's court do the same thing, which is exactly what they did in the Bible. Then there's an attractiveness about that power.
Yeah.
And of course there came a point where they couldn't go on, and the plagues went on with Moses and Aaron, through Moses and Aaron, and they, and the magicians from Pharaoh's court said, this is the finger of God. And they was kind of at a breaking point, but it was a real competition there for a while, and we wanted to be faithful. We wanted to present that, and so this, Jack's that's part of the heart of the book, is this whole sort of choice, moral choice between Jack has this sort of clear, escape, be great, grasp, dominate, take, achieve, which all those words aren't bad.
Right.
Some of them are really bad. But then there's the other: serve, humble, die to yourself. There's a kind of goodness, gentleness, humility, love. There's this. We come to. I don't know if it's from a sermon at our church, but I think I came away at some point. I don't know if it was you or me, but I don't know if it's you putting it into my head, but came away thinking like this book is about the way of life versus the way of death.
Yep.
And in many ways, that's what all the Green Ember stories are about as well. But I feel like it's really clear in this book.
Yeah. And when you were listing off the traits just now, one of the ones you said was serve. And it just made me think, like, one of the things that you see in this book is everyone has a master. And so who will you serve? Which master will you serve with what you have?
Yeah. Which is true. And like, you think about, that's one thing I love about the Lord of the Rings. Like maybe I love a lot of fantasy and popular fantasy stuff, and there's like bad things about something, good things, but just there's nothing that touches the way that Tolkien handled in the Lord of the Rings, even that whole question about nobility and greatness and gifts, and how the clarity of someone even like Gandalf, who's this really incredible being. The more you know about him, the more you're wow. But he is a servant. Ultimately, he's a servant, and even among men, he's a servant. He's this great, powerful thing, but he's like yields to other people. Only takes over, even from messed up Denethor, he only does that really reluctantly and late, because he's a servant. I'm an advisor. I just love that. I think that's so beautiful. And you see that in scripture a lot too. So yeah, the service is a powerful thing. If you're looking around and there's no one who's for whom you need to be accountable to, then you are God. You think you are God, and you are,
right.
and you're cruising for a bruising. That's what my mom would say.
So since we were talking about Jack and the Green Ember and all of Jack's qualities, I want to know if Jack were, I'm assuming, a rabbit from the Green Ember series, what character would he be, or what character would he be most similar to?
Jack Rabbit. You have any thoughts on this?
I don't know. It feels like in the Green Ember, there's less of like a clear, like A-type hero kind of than Jack.
Mhm.
Yes.
So he's got Pickett, he's got Smalls, he's got he's got traits of different people.
Is he like Pickett and Heather's best qualities together?
I think so, yeah.
Because I think he's like Heather.
Smart like Heather, like emotionally intelligent like Heather.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's got the physical, prowess of somebody like Pickett, or the sort of up for the fight that Pickett becomes, I would say.
Yeah.
He's almost like a maturer Pickett and a maturer Heather together in a way. So that's interesting, because he's such a talented character, that we have to, there needs to be a lot of limits on him for him to be interesting. And I think he is. But yeah. Well, I don't know about Jackrabbit. I think it's funny that sort of that kind of illustrates the differences between the stories and what we're trying to accomplish, and where we're focusing the spotlight in order to make the story interesting is different.
Yes, it's definitely different. I was mulling over that on my own and going, that's hard. I can't figure out if there is overlap. So it's good to hear.
Well, there is. The biggest thing that's the same to me is that Pickett also has a vision for what he can become if he turns his back, if he indulges his rage. He has a vision in Garton, Longtreader, and so there's kind of like there's Garton, and then there's Wilfred, maybe in his life, and then Helmer, who's in the middle a little bit, and Helmer's kind of like, what is he? There's a little there. To me, that's the Green Ember story becomes more and more interesting with Pickett and Helmer, basically, and where they fit in between sort of Garton, the faithful, and Heather's a little bit less interesting in that respect, because her internal compass, her moral compass is so strong that she has to have other limitations, which is what's similar to Jack, I think. Yeah. But that whole, like, I see these ways and I must choose, and I don't always make the right choice, and I see the attractiveness of the sort of the bad side. That feels true to like our experience, feels true to my experience as a person. Like those choices are always there, and I don't always make the right choice, and it's not just logic. It's not, there's a lot going on there that influences that. So again, trying to be faithful to reality with a capital R, it feels like that's part of that, is trying to be honest about what actually tempts us, and what makes us struggle, and how attractive the way of death can be. Because the way of life is the way is laying down your life, which is this ironic kind of thing.
Yeah, and both books have young children wielding dangerous weapons. So
yes, a very exciting similarity between both of us.
Yes, there's fighting.
Yeah.
Yep.
One other theme that I really appreciated that this book hit on was identifying who your true enemies are. And I thought that was good, because you get to see Jack and Benny not sure all the time, especially once they end up in Wayland, like who the enemies are. Like, is your enemy just somebody who's rude to you?
Yeah.
No. And just being able to see that some of these people are holding grudges and have made assumptions about Jack and Benny because of things people like Jack and Benny have done to them, but then having their Jack and Benny's mentor be like, they're not your enemy. Like, you guys are on the same side on the things that matter. And I think that was a really profound, continual lesson being taught and shown. And I've listened to some other podcasts and interviews that you've done over the years, Sam, and something that you've mentioned a lot is how you prefer for messages to be caught, not taught to kids. And I really appreciate that. Like anytime a book started being taught to me as a kid, it was like, no time for this. But I feel like there's just so many lessons caught from these stories that I really appreciated that theme of identifying your true enemies and the theme of greatness versus goodness. And I loved Jack and Benny's relationship because I feel that Jack had all of this natural inborn greatness that we were talking about and skill and coordination. And Benny has all the humor and family values of an intact family since Jack's dad has passed before. And so Benny has both of his parents in this great honest relationship with them, and they have this great trust in him because of the fact that they know they can trust him, that he's being honest with them, and how they've just embraced Jack in his hard time, and they are true brothers, which I really love. But I love that Benny does not have the emotional intelligence that Jack does. And one of my favorite things was when Jack told Benny, read the game. Like, this is what's going on in this situation that we're looking at. This player is doing this and this player is doing this, and you're about to like blow up the entire field. And I really appreciate that because with kids on the spectrum, without using a sports metaphor, that's what I'm constantly doing with them, is saying, let's read this situation. Let's look at what's happening. Let's try to do 2 steps ahead. What is this person doing? What would that lead to? What is this person doing? If you did this, what would that make them do or lead them to do? And I really appreciated seeing that modeling in this story of Jack and Benny in their friendship, so that my kids won't be like, oh, it's just my mom nagging on me. No, this is what people who care about each other do to help each other level up and be safe.
I don't know if I agree that Benny has less emotional intelligence. I think maybe it's just different because
it's different. Yeah.
He knew what was in Jack's heart, and he knew what he needed to do to protect him.
Yes.
And so I think it's just different. Like they just
social. I think social, emotional, like what you're seeing in a group.
Yeah.
Jack is able to read the group very quickly.
Jack does. Jack is very he could be a politician. Yeah, he could be a pastor. He could be something that was he's a leader, natural leader. Yeah. But you're exactly right that Amanda, that it's really key moments. It's Benny who knows, and what Benny is an expert on is he's an expert on Jack.
Right. Yeah.
And I love the fact that they're different, and it's cool that of all the sort of like, if you were to ask us at the very beginning of this, like what are the themes, what are the key things, I wouldn't have said what you just said, Amber, about it, but I totally see it. That did that happen? That's exactly right. That sort of awareness and paying attention and helping each other. Yeah. And that's a big thing for you too, is this Jack and Benny are not equals. They're different. They're very different people. They have obviously equality of worth, but Benny couldn't say like, I'm as excellent in so many areas the way that Jack is. You look a little bit, you'll see that Benny's excellent in lots of areas too. Like you said, he's humorous, but that whole thing of like, who is Jack without Benny? And that is a scary prospect, because Jack is that whole I've got your back. Jack is there, and that is so vital for him, especially considering the losses that he's had. And so certainly, I love that about Benny, because who's my favorite character in the Lord of the Rings? Who's a lot of people's favorite character? It's
Sam.
Sam, yeah.
I was gonna say, it reminds me.
We love him, and if he was a great king who was powerful and strong, and I'm gonna, the vision he has of himself when he has the ring to begin with, that's not who he is.
Yeah.
And thank goodness, because that's that's why we love him. And so yeah, it's not and that's another thing of like greatness isn't always goodness, and being a servant and loving and serving and coming along beside somebody and saying, my life for yours, I'm for you is maybe the most powerful thing.
Yeah.
We all fit together differently. I love that, we need each other. The way that St. Paul talks about the body of Christ is always been so informative for me in life and understanding. I feel like if we could just give the modern world this gift of the Christian view of membership, and C.S. Lewis writes beautifully about it, that, none better than St. Paul. And it's just this beautiful picture of the body. And just because you're not the mouth, or you're not you're not the eye, you're not the arm, you matter. Just any of us get a little injury to some small, what you thought of was a insignificant part of your body, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't function.
Yeah.
I thought that my little toe didn't matter, but breaking it means I can't do a lot of things. And so we all matter. And I think looking on our more modest parts with certain kind of care and that kind of thing, and loving each other. And just because you're not, but we cannot say to each other, I don't need you. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And so Benny is not the same part as Jack. And that's beautiful, because that gives us a story, that gives us a difference. And I personally love that. I love that in storytelling. I love that in reality. I feel like it reflects reality. So yeah, and that's really Josiah big time on Benny. Just, Benny is Josiah's creation, really. And so is Jack. But boy, the dynamic of those two, that was there at the beginning. That's one of the things I loved about the story from the very, very beginning, was those two together. Michelle was always there too. And I think Michelle got more and more interesting as things went on. But boy, that core relationship that starts with these two boys is what drew me to the story. Because what do you love about the Lord of the Rings? Is it the ring? Is it the quest? No, it's the characters. We go on the journey because of them. And I love Jack and Benny.
It's as good as the Lord of the Rings. That's what we're saying.
It's bad.
Well, I was noticing the similarities throughout. I was like, this is just like Sam and Frodo. I love that.
That was completely unconscious. Like I never thought of that until
I was directly trying to rip off Sam and Frodo.
But no, I know it's so funny. Like somebody mentioned it, maybe even in an interview, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's similar." But that's like,
that's the way it is. That's like how sitcoms always are, and just character dynamics. You always have, the Barney Fife and Andy Griffith, and just these two contrasting characters.
Yes, but Barney Fife is bumbling, so I appreciated that Benny wasn't bumbling.
He bumbles a little. He bumbles, but I know what you're saying. Yeah,
intelligently though, with some.
Yes, he's not as wounded as Barney can get. Barney's so sensitive.
Yeah, that's like playing it for comedy. We comedy is a passenger on the sort of the serious journey.
The jokes come after.
The jokes, the jokes are there. Yeah. And I'm glad you enjoyed the humor of it. That's definitely. I loved that. I feel like, for me, the Green Ember, the humor comes, it comes. I like it. That's natural for me in a lot of ways too. But this unlocked some things, because it's people, and they're, you'd be surprised how limiting the references are when you're talking about rabbits and a made up world. You can't make comments about anything in so much in the real world. You have to actually be a good writer. So this was a nice, relaxing thing, and so it's just like, we don't have to be that good.
So why did you choose that it was set in like the 80s, right? How did you choose that time period of all time periods?
Specifically, the way Amanda phrased this question yesterday to me was, how does Josiah, a teen, write a book set before his time, but not long enough ago that it's a true historical time period?
So
exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a true historical time period. It felt true to me. I was there.
I don't like thinking of my childhood as a historical time period. It's this time period.
We got to confront reality at some point.
How do you research the 80s, though?
Yeah.
I talk to old people like my dad.
just use my memory. It's what's left of it. This is basically we're trying to get it down.
We're salvaging Eston Smith's mind from
Yeah.
this story.
So you're saying we now know your dad's favorite cereals from the 80s.
Yes.
Oh,
Are you
man.
an Apple Jacks guy? Do you like
I
Apple
love
Jacks?
Apple Jacks. Yeah.
Those were so good.
Yeah. The simple, I think, answer is we both love those kind of stories. You know, I've introduced him to a lot of the stories from that time period, and they're pretty popular still. You think about Star Wars and those kinds of things, but things I grew up with. But Steven Spielberg, George Lucas sort of stuff is really powerful. I think that's you can feel the flavor of that. You can feel Tolkien, Lewis, but which is kind of a cliche, but I feel like it's honest. But then you got Lucas and Spielberg is kind of more influence into this world.
Those are it was kind of feel like the fairy tales of our generation in some ways. You have Star Wars and E.T. and all these great stories.
The Karate Kid, which is a North Star for us.
It really is.
It's a really wonderful. It really. It's all about fatherlessness and that kind of. It's a powerful story.
Yeah.
I think, and also super cool. But yeah, I think that there's just the basic thing. Kids on bikes without cell phones is just hard to beat as far as
the limitations there are really interesting.
Yeah,
limitations that we don't have today.
Yeah, they're kind of it's romantic, I think, in a way. So I think it is far enough away to where there's some romance, but you also mix in nostalgia for a lot of people, my age, and that helps too. So I think it's a in some ways maybe we should have just said it now, but I don't know. We like that.
It doesn't feel forced. It feels like that's
it
where
doesn't.
It should sit,
no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
We like the limitations are always valuable, and so the limitations of being in a small rural West Virginia town, which is, again, like you said, Amber, that's pretty natural to me. The connection to Africa is really strong for me too, having lived there as a teenager, and particularly the Zulu people in particular. And so it feels like a natural, organic sort of voice to tell the story. And I think one thing that's nice about the 80s, because there are a lot of stories, even stories going back and telling, is it doesn't feel like you have to do a lot of. So if you were doing a Napoleonic story or maybe like the Austen sort of era, it might be an exception because there are so many popular stories because of Jane Austen and others that you actually might be able to set something there and not have to do tons of heavy lifting to bring people along. But 80s feels like close enough
because it's connected to our time still. Obviously.
Yeah, people kind of understand it. You don't have to do a lot of and this is how this works, and this is kind of which is nice as a storyteller. You're always trying to, that's why cliches, people are always down on cliches, and I get that. But also cliches are effective. They exist because they work. People understand them. They understand the guy coming into town with a black hat who's going into the bar and starting trouble. You don't have to say now
he's not the hero.
They're effective, and it's nice to kind of subvert those, and I get all that, but sometimes the setting and the world it's nice to, especially if you want to focus on other things, which is always the deal for me. That's the same reason why I get asked a lot by kids, particularly, why aren't there squirrels, or why aren't there why don't we see a good hawk or something like that? And that's not what I want you to see. Don't look over there. Don't think a man walking into the story. That's not what we're thinking about. We want to think about
the field mice.
Yeah, exactly. We want to think about the moral complexity, because these rabbits are stand-ins for people, and so the evil characters are not, and species are not as morally complicated. They're morally simple, which is kind of reflects the reality of sort of dark forces or whatever. So you just have this moral complexity. That's what I want you to look at and think here. So it's similar with this. It's just anything that kind of relieves the mind and kind of lets you focus on what we actually care about, which is the things we've been talking about. This whole the characters, the greatness, the goodness. Look at that and see and feel and be introduced to these other kinds, these other races of people from other worlds, and that's what we want to focus on.
So Josiah, when this was in the TV script form, was it still set in the 80s, or was that a change you guys made for the novel?
It was always set in the 80s. I think I didn't really have a whole lot of influence from you setting it there. I've just always been kind of fascinated with that, obviously from him, because he's shared all these stories with me, but yeah, it was always connected to 80s and the fun sort of music and movies from that era, bringing those into a fantasy world.
Yeah, I do think it's of, what does your sticker say? Oh, nice.
Appalachianos.
Is that a
That's
real
a real
place?
place.
No, not yet.
Then where's my sticker?
Yeah, no,
I definitely need fandom stickers.
Well, we want to do an Appalachianos shirt. For those listening, you'll maybe after you read the book.
Watch the book.
After you watch the book or read the movie, you'll be able to maybe appreciate this little place called Appalachianos, which is a little pizza place in Myrtle, West Virginia, a little made up town and a little made up pizzeria. But
If it's made up, can we make up that it's still this really cool place, but it has gluten-free pizza, which I know was not a thing in the 80s, but I think it should have been?
It does. It does. Freddie Marino knows how to make good gluten pizza.
Good.
That feels very. I think what would the people in small town West Virginia say to like,
You're probably right.
Just die. Just eat it and die.
Like that is not how you use cauliflower.
I was there. It isn't hard for me to imagine what no.
Oh, that's so funny. See, now you completely threw me off of my thought
Okay,
train.
so
that
I want to know. Now I'm going to go on my thought train. So I want to know, since this was originally written out for TV, if the day comes around where it does become a TV show, did you have to change so many things for the book that the TV show is going to be completely different, or will it be the way you envisioned it for TV in the first place?
That is so interesting. I have no idea. I
you
think
have some.
Maybe a little bit.
You're still working. Yeah, he's working on it now. He's adapting it. We adapted it he's adapting it back. I think
it's a very inefficient way to do this.
Into a TV show again, and then
we're going to write the video game.
We're going to write a really good novel.
Yeah.
After all this, we're really going to
novel based on the TV series,
which was based on the novel, which is that's going to be a good book.
Well, maybe it should just go straight to being a play.
That's cool.
That's the adaptation of the TV script from the novel.
Oh yeah, a lot of synthesizer.
Musical.
Yeah, I think it is kind of episodic, the book. Like, I hope there wouldn't be too much that would have to be altered. I think, like, obviously it's a completely different way of telling the story, but I think the core of it would be very similar, and it would have the same set of characters, and I think a lot of the same events would happen. But there would probably be things that needed to be filled in or left out to make it more efficient for the screen.
Well, you can't change it too much, because then the book lovers will be mad if the...
Yeah, you can't make the book lovers mad. That is... Mm-mm.
You just got to come back to them and just say, like, listen, the book was not the original artifact. So, book's got to get in line.
Cry about it.
The book wasn't as good as the movie that I invented in my mind.
Oh, man. You got to read the game. Read the game. The game does not want you to be unfaithful to the book.
It'll be a good show. He's working on it. Even it's just a different art form. So I hope that it is the same. This is true of the Green Ember too. If and when we adapt that, we're just going to have to live with the fact that it's a different. If you're telling the story to a child or painting a painting for your grandmother, it's a different thing. And even if it's like both of them are sort of rabbits with swords, or both of them are whatever, it's still going to be different, and you have to live with there are different limitations, there are different colors, and the cinema or visual stuff is there's because a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's really true. I mean, you can do. I envy filmmakers because it's one look. You can just a person kind of looking squeamish or looking afraid. I mean, that's a page, or that's two. The amount of work you have to put in to sort of give that to somebody in the written form. And there's different strengths of the written form too. I love the novel. You can get inside characters' heads in a way that you can't really do on screen, but it's so powerful that it's just it's painting with different and more varied paintbrush. With cinema and film, the music is massive. No music in novels. You have this incredible, if you just added that to storytelling, you would have this incredible new dimension. And then you talk
I was going to say that I think you guys should make a Spotify list for Jack Zulu.
We do. We have.
He did a
do.
long time ago.
Good. I'm looking forward to listening to that.
That might make me
Check
get
that
on.
out.
I might need to get on Spotify at that point. Actually,
Probably should. Yeah.
I'm still angry about them about my
About Napster.
I am. I'm angry about my my music friends who can't eat on 3 cents for 8
Yeah.
billion streams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
that's,
man.
we need to go back to LPs. That's all I'm saying. We
It's
need to
true.
go back to vinyl. So we can make money. These artists, we're not. Tom Petty's not getting enough money, is what I'm getting at. And I'm needing to, but no, yeah, that's a great. We would do that. I think he's all over that. The music's actually been a big part of this. I think again, partly because he thinks. This is why I think he's going to be a good director, a good filmmaker at some point, is because he thinks he's really good with stories. But I think because of that background in illustration, he loves visuals. He loves thinking through it. He can talk to animators very intelligently. He could go down that path if he wanted to do animation, I think. But it's also, he loves music. He composes music and really listens and learns a lot about it, cinematic music and other. And so he's got a big sort of vision for it, which I'm excited to sort of unleash that on the show. When the time is right for that, because I think this story is, I'm very pleased with how this turned out as a novel. I think that was a good partnership for us. Totally.
Yeah.
I think
Definitely.
that was a cool synergy, and it was a cool, we put this big story idea that he had and that I contributed to into the package of what I think is a really good novel. But I still think that I'm excited about the power of being able to tell that in a visual way. I just think to me, it's like you're in black and white, and then you've got, wow, all the colors, and what you can do with it is amazing.
Yeah.
So, did you guys have any disagreements about how the story should go?
I wanted to do
Or
it with
dialogue?
rabbits.
You wanted to do what?
I wanted to do it with rabbits.
Yak Zulu as the
It's
rabbit?
already been done.
That was a dumb joke.
That was
that was an SD Smith joke.
That was a magnificent joke. I give it 5 stars. That's an A+. I don't know who I need to talk to your homeschool teacher here and possibly give her a big kiss and tell her she's doing a great job. You deserve full marks for that today. Disagreements.
We can't take anything seriously. That's the main problem.
I disagree.
We didn't have many big ones.
No,
we're both we both really care about the story, and we just want it to be as good as possible. So I think ideally we're usually able to kind of see, like, if the other person has a better idea, then let's go for it.
Yeah, it's definitely best idea wins, which again that's unique to more of the film industry. That's more of a common thing there, because when you're writing a novel, usually you're obviously writing it alone, and you're it, and
right.
you are the authority, and a lot of times you're feeling this like, oh, I wish I could collaborate.
Yeah.
And then somebody gives you an idea and you say, that's dumb, I'm in charge here, don't tell me what to do, but there is a little bit of like a little benevolent theocracy here, and you're this little baby Theo, and you're kind of like, I'm in charge here, but it's so I think what's required in animation or in film and all that TV is you got to have people, you got to have somebody in charge. You got to have a Spielberg, you got to have somebody who's calling the shots, whatever. But you do the best of those directors, the best of those people are excellent collaborators, and there's a humility that's required in that. That's something I admire about film industry. You don't often think, oh, Hollywood, I love their humility. But in this case, a lot of the people that I know in that world, that's how they operate. And I got to give credit to Josiah, who again, this is his story, so he could be very grasping about it, and very like, this is, don't you dare change that. I wonder if that's how I would have been at 16 or 15. I think that's pretty likely. But he's had a very open hand with it, and he definitely. And I think my feeling is the reason this works to the extent it works is because of his humility and commitment to collaboration. And I think that's true. If I can brag on him a little bit, I think that's true about him in his life as well as in his art. That's been the greatest joy of writing this book together, has been not just what we produced, which I'm very proud of, but what the experience of producing it together has been a great joy for me, and it makes me, I'm proud of him. I'm pleased. I'm delighted. Like as a co-author, it's like, it's cool just to have like a ringer, to have somebody that's good come in. And I mean, I think he's like bringing Jack Zulu into the game.
Yeah.
It's really powerful, but I'm more pleased with the heart, the heart for collaboration, the heart for humility, the yielding, all that kind of stuff. I think that's been on display. Well, it has been. That's been the experience, and I'm very, very proud of him for that. But that's been absolutely necessary. And the truth is, we have disagreed, but we've been able to work it out.
Yeah, I just don't think there haven't been like huge disagreements. It's mostly little details.
But that's a massive landmine. Like that's something that you think like, oh, I'm going to write a book with my son. That's going to be I'm amazed and grateful to God that we got through this so far. Again, we're still working, so we've got more books to come. But to get through it so far without like, there's enough tension between fathers and sons anyway. Like, take out the trash and and all that kind of stuff. And so the fact that we've been able to do that, I'm really, really, really grateful that it's gone pretty well.
Have you storyboarded it out? How many books do you guys anticipate this series being?
I think our main goal, like we know the next 2 books, we have a planned trilogy for this, but I think we can run with it. I think there are a lot of stories to tell in this world. We've got an interesting set of characters who we can take some different directions, I think.
Except that now that I gave you my idea, I think it should be 4 books.
Yes, absolutely.
Add another book.
That was off the record. That was off
Amazon.
Yes, I gave her an idea, but we'll never say what it was.
Yes.
We'll take full credit. That's the best. I say mediocre artists borrow, the best artists steal, or something like that.
Well, since we're talking about humility, Sam, would you read a little bit from the book for us? On page 122, when Mr. Wheeler, the boy's mentor character, is talking about becoming. I just really love that part. And I could talk to you guys about this for another hour, but I know that you guys have things to do. So I think this would be a really good point to end on.
Sure. This is neat. This is Mr. Wheeler speaking to some young students. My dear friends, he said, patting the rock he sat on, you are becoming what you will always be with every habit you forge for yourself, with every discipline hard won. You are becoming something solid, like this rock. However, he said, sheathing Caladblog in a slow, deliberate motion, you must remember that you are not done yet. You are not done becoming. Think of clay, not rock. It is never too late to change a wrong thing. Even stubborn rocks can move over time and make way for water of life to flow. It is never too late to take the better path. If you have started down the wrong way, turn around, go back, begin again. This takes humility. I know, because I have doubled back on my path 100 times. I have never regretted aiming to get it right, nor will you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for putting this into the world, guys.
Thanks for reading it. Thanks for sharing it with your folks. We're really grateful. Our deep and sincere desire is that it will be a gift that will serve the kids and families who read it, and that God will use it in a way that multiplies the goodness that's there in a way that we can't control or predict.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, just again, if it's a little of a modest blessing to a small group of people, that would be of infinite value to us.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you. So for our listeners, I want to let you know that unlike the Green Ember books, Jack Zulu does not end on a giant cliffhanger, so you will not be sitting in anxiety until the next book comes out. It leaves a lot of stuff open, but it also has a nice little closure point. So I know quite a few of you are concerned about cliffhangers, so I just wanted you to know. And we are in October now, and so the pre-orders for Jack Zulu have opened, and you can go ahead and go to Amazon or to I'm guessing jackzulu.com is a place they could order as well. Yep. You can go there, and that probably benefits the author more financially if you want to support them in that way and get your books ordered. Get them all ordered for Christmas stockings because they should ship in November. And we thank you for your time, and we thank you for listening to Sam and Josiah with us. And we just want to remind you all that the stories are truer than true. Have a good day.